Good evening, everyone. Guess what? It's Election Day's Eve. Yay! We've been waiting for this day for so long. It's there's a record 25.2 million Latinos who are eligible to vote tomorrow, and every single one of those votes counts. Every single one of those votes is necessary. In the last couple of months have been a little disheartening for our community, and many of us may be tempted to sit it out tomorrow, to stay on the sidelines. But in some people have even counseled the community to boycott the elections altogether. So while there's good reason to be frustrated, we cannot afford to be apathetic. And so tonight I have a group of experts here who are going to tell us why it's so important for us to get out the vote tomorrow, why is it important to ensure that both parties respect Latinos and address our issues and priorities, and how the only way to get to that point is to grow our electoral power. So here with me, I have some amazing people who are out there on the ground every day, trying to get Latinos engaged in not only in the politics but also in the civic life of this country. First of all, I have Joaquín Guerra, who is a political director for Texas Organizing Project. How are you, Joaquín?
Well, thanks for having me on, Elian.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Next to Joaquín on the screen, we see Jonathan Jages. Is it? I always say it wrong.
James. Jonathan James Green.
James Green. I'm sorry. English is my third language. So Jonathan is a community advocate here in Maryland, and he just won the Public Service Award from Telemundo last week. Shout out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How are you? Thank you for being here, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And tonight we're going to try something a little different than what we usually do, but I have somebody very special that I didn't want to leave out, and I don't care how we do it, but I want this woman to be with us tonight, and her name is Gabriela Lemus, Dr. Gabriela Lemus, and she's the Executive Director of the Progressive Congress. And Gabi is joining us from her phone. Say hello, Gabi.
Hi there.
I hope you guys can hear her. Can you guys hear her okay? Joaquín and Jonathan?
She's coming through great.
Yes.
Perfect. And so let's start with the whole with the questions. Let's start with an overview. You guys are out there every day trying to engage Latinos in the civic life of the United States. What kind of patterns have you seen through your work on the ground in terms of engagement this cycle? Anybody can go first. I'll call you out. Joaquín, tell me.
Sure. So I think that in terms of patterns, what works for us here at the Texas Organizing Project, it really comes down to multiple contexts, and it comes down to engaging Latinos, but really all voters on what's important to them. For us, it's not about red or blue. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's about solving solutions. So when we go to visit voters at the doors or talk to them on the phones, the first question that we ask them is, what's important to you? And sometimes that can be immigration reform, protecting the Texas Dream Act, but other times it could be potholes in their streets. It could be dangerous intersections in their homes. TOP is a community organizing, we're a community-based organization that organizes around multiple issues at the neighborhood, at the neighborhood level as well as the state and federal level. So we talk to people and we follow the cardinal rule of organizing, which is, we meet people where they're at, and then we talk about those issues and we connect them to the political process, and we politicize them on the fact that the issues that are important to them, there's somebody with power that has the power to make that change. So that's like really the first place that we start off with. And over the last 3 cycles, that TOP has been organizing this way, both on the issue side and the electoral side. We've seen that our organizing methodology work. In 2012, here in Harris County, which is Houston in Texas, we helped increase the Latino voter turnout by 5 points. We went from 12 to 17%. And the way that we did that is that we visited with voters at their homes multiple times, as well as connecting with them on the phones, and took every obstacle out of voting to make voting easy and convenient for them so that they become more regular voters, because the majority of the voters that we target are occasional voters. So in terms of patterns, for us, it's like, many of the voters that we're visiting this cycle are voters that we've talked to in the past, but we're scaling up on the number of voters that we're talking to. But in terms of patterns, nothing is going to beat that face-to-face conversation like we're having here, but at the doors, and then following up with them on the phones.
Perfect. Very, very true. Very true. Especially with the Latino community, I've seen that person-to-person contact is usually very important. Jonathan, what has been the case with you?
So in Maryland, I think things are a little different. We've had a big gubernatorial election where the current lieutenant governor is running for governor, right? So as we talk in my work engaging with the Latino community across the state, I think it's been an issue of understanding what has been done in the past 8 years. I think that the O'Malley Brown administration have been an absolute rock star in the Latino community in the state of Maryland, because they've worked to pass licenses from documented immigrants, they passed the DREAM Act, they are limiting the state's cooperation with Secure Communities program, the failed communities program. So in terms of all those issues, when it comes to the Latino community, I mean, they love the O'Malley Brown administration, so it's a matter of fact of defining what are the different positions, right, between now Anthony Brown, who's running for governor, and Larry Hogan, who is a Republican candidate, right? So it's a very stark approach to the immigrant community in Maryland, and I think that as soon as we're able to sort of lay that out for them, it becomes very clear to them why this election is important. I think we've been fighting this uphill battle of trying to separate national politics to state politics, right? There's a huge difference, and there is a lot more that can be done at the state level. It has been happening, right? So when our community sees that if you elect the right folks to the right positions, even though there's not been a lot of leadership at the national level, our state, Maryland, can move forward. And I think that's when we will start turning in our communities.
Yeah, very true, very true, very, very important point. So especially the part where you talk about the local politics being different from the national politics. And now I want to hear from Gabriela. She's on the screen right now. And Gabi, you can tell us what you have seen in terms of patterns out there in terms of engagement with the Latino community.
Okay, so I've been really tracking races like Colorado, and I've also been looking specifically at sort of micro-targeting in terms of environmental voter turnout, for example. And there has been quite a bit of discussion and quite a bit of outreach, especially in places like Colorado, where there is such a larger percent of Latinos who, not only can affect the outcome of the race, but are affected by the outcome, I should say the races, are going to be affected by it. I think part of the problem we've had, especially this year with turnout in a midterm, has been related to the number, the percentages, I should say, of Latinos especially in House races. It turns out states like the obvious states, Colorado, California, Texas, there are not only are there higher percentages of Latino demographics, but there's also a higher likelihood of some kind of relationship with the Latino community, which you don't see so much in many of the other races. So there's kind of twofold things happening. One, there's great disillusionment, I think, on the part of Latinos as they look towards the races. Why should we vote? Two, in part because of the immigration question, and I know you'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But also in terms of just like not really being approached by the parties themselves very much. Not like they do in a presidential. It's different because it's not statewide. Again, with the exception maybe of Colorado, where you really have, a Senate race that's very viable. And these factors contribute to whether or not Latinos turn out, I think. But we're seeing also a lot of movement, especially around environmental questions related to fracking, related just to climate change, period. Latinos care about this kind of issue, and they see the viability of it. Where we are seeing a little bit of indifference is, Latinos reflect what's going on in the rest of the country, that people are disappointed, people are disengaged overall, and they're kind of overall disgusted with what's going on with government.
Yeah, well, that on top of the fact that the midterms are notoriously bad for elections, period. No, the people are not as engaged as they are usually during the regular elections, the presidential elections. So this is, and Gabriela, thank you so much for that answer, because it's very thorough. And one thing that I see is in every election, there's so much talk about the potential, the Latino community as a voting bloc, and all of this talk, and somehow it seems like that potential is never realized. So what are the campaigns doing? One, to get the Latinos to vote. You mentioned that there's not a lot of work being done in that, but also on a broader sense, what are the kind of tactics in your experience that work best to improve the Latino turnout? What should the campaigns be doing? Anyone can talk about this.
Well, I think that first and foremost, there has to be a recognition that it requires investment.
Hold on, Gabby. Hold on 1 second. Go ahead, Joaquín.
Thank you. Sorry, Gabriela. I think that it really comes down to recognition of investment. I think by and large, the Latino community, is a very young community as well. Especially when you look at the rates of voting between the 18 to 29 demographic are very low compared to 45 and older, and it gets higher there. But as I was saying earlier, I think that there's something to be said about trusted messengers, and in terms of a lot of times, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party aren't necessarily the best messengers to go into neighborhoods and communities to talk to Latinos or really like any voters, especially when you have the condition that we have where Congress is broken. Republicans refuse to participate in the governing process whatsoever, and people are disillusioned. But at the state and local level, where policy actually really matters, and there are many issues that all voters, but especially Latinos, care about. And Gabriela was mentioning just in terms of the environment here in Pasadena, Texas, we have a state rep race, which is one of the hottest state rep races in the state. It's HG 144, and there are 2 Latinos running in that race. But what makes this race really interesting also is the environmental angle to this, because Pasadena has a number of oil refineries and chemical plants in the area, and that's an issue that affects everybody that lives in that community because the air quality is very bad. People suffer from asthma, people suffer from all sorts of respiratory ailments. And one of the issues that we work on, is we're putting pressure on the EPA to put fence line monitoring around these refineries and chemical plants. So people do pay attention, to issues that are. It really requires like digging down just instead of the hot button issues that are at the very top that people are talking about. You got to peel back the layer a little bit, which is where it goes down to like having one-on-one conversations with people and finding out what's really important to them, and not treating the community like a monolith, because it isn't. It requires having a conversation. And asking people what's important to them, and then inviting them into the process. Because for many Latinos that haven't voted before, it may be new to them. They don't necessarily know what the process is like. So you really have to, go step by step with them to make sure that they're comfortable, so that they feel confident about going to do it. Especially when they may be working 2 to 3 jobs and having to deal with here in Texas. Unconstitutional voter ID laws that are on the books. So Sorry to be so long-winded. I'll pass it off to Gabriela.
No, no, no. It's so good because you brought up so many. I don't even know where to start picking from your answers. Such a great answer. So who wants to go next? Jonathan or Gabby?
I'll add something very quickly.
Okay.
I think that the way that Joaquín framed it was very good. I was speaking in Maryland. It's sort of an interesting state because the population of the Latinos are not. They were close to maybe 10%, but there are parts where it's going faster than others, right? So the Western Maryland Democratic Party was having a summit, and they were having a panel on Latinos, and they all kept asking me, how to get the Latino vote? How do we get them to vote for us in this particular election? And my answer is basically, you don't. Because it's not about you coming into our communities and having us vote for you one time, but it's about us working together. Come, stay with us, learn about our issues, learn about what we really care about, and work with us for that term, so that the next time when you're running, we know who you are because we've been working with you. So I just really agree with Joaquín's answer, and I wanted to add that.
Beautiful, and I see that Gabby just joined us. Hi, Gabby.
Hi, Eliane. Hi, guys. Sorry.
Good to see you, finally. I know that this was very initial, but you know what? It made it more exciting that you were on the phone. This is the first time ever that we did a phone call mixed in with a hangout. So you made history, Gabby. Woohoo! So do you want me to refresh the question again? I was asking them, about the fact that the campaigns, and you mentioned that when you answered the last time, the campaigns haven't been doing much, and for whatever reason or whatever the time frame has been. But what do you think the campaigns should be paying attention to or doing in order to engage the Latino community? Not just like at election time, but I feel like this needs to happen all the time. Gabby, go ahead.
I completely concur. It does need to happen all the time, and I think there's a disconnect between, here's the problem. When the campaigns are looking at this, they really are only looking at numbers. They're looking at who's going to turn out, how many are going to turn out, the likelihood of their turning out, how much money it's going to cost, and is it worth putting the investment, especially when there's difficult races. And in House races, especially in midterms, it's really gets down to the stats. And when you have states, I mentioned before Colorado. Colorado is a state where you have, I think it's, depending on who you talk to, I've seen 14.7, I've seen 10.8% of the voters are Latino. It's important then to engage because that's a large margin. And especially because in midterms, people, you said it yourself, Eliane, they don't turn out. It's hard to turn people out during midterms. When you start breaking away from certain states and you look at places like Iowa or Ohio or even, well, Wisconsin, not so much. There's higher percentages. But then the margins go down to 3%. They drop from 10% down to 3% of the voters registered to turn out are Latino. And this can cause, when there's been such a big money issue, and there's there's debt. There's always each side always tries to portray themselves as the other side has more money than we do. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they are very late to the game in addressing minority voters, even if we are part of the base, and it's on both sides, and it causes it causes resentment. Add to that there's no policy that the Latinos are really engaged on, with the exception of immigration and maybe the economy, or actually the economy is a big one. They're not putting the investment in the infrastructure. They're not putting the investment in the actual turnout, and getting them to do that means we have to guarantee a certain amount of vote. And the problem we have, I think, as Latinos is our community keeps growing, so the bar keeps changing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we got 80% of the vote out during a presidential between 1972 and 1986. Fast forward to now, the percentage goes down, but the number of people voting goes up. So it's kind of a chicken and egg game. It's a game we've been playing for many, many moons. I know I've been doing it way too long. But it's never ending. We never do enough as Latinos.
Yeah.
So we don't get the policies we want.
A vast virus database has been updated.
Beautiful.
Okay, sorry.
Your computer is talking to you.
Yes.
So let's talk about a little bit about, there's so much that is against the vote, on top of all of the fact that these are not the most popular elections, but there's so much. There's the voter restrictions, like Joaquín, you were mentioning before. There's the disenchantment from people. There's everything that is going on right now. There's the immigration issue that's like the big elephant, right? So what are the potential consequences? And I'm going to be jumping a little bit because we started so late, and I don't want to keep you guys more than we need to be here. But what are the consequences of voting or not voting in these elections? I want to get to the heart of this, because I don't think that people out there really make the connection in terms of, why do I even need to bother, right? We're so disenchanted. These people don't listen to us anyway. They don't really care. Why is it so important that our community actually makes the effort to get out there?
I think it's fairly simple. I think that politicians from both parties pay attention to who's voting. And if one group is voting more so than others, then politicians are going to bend over backwards to accommodate, pander to, and engage with that community. So particularly, among Latinos, while there has been some investments, made, I think that we're a long ways to getting the sort of attention that we really deserve, and we see that across the board, not just reflective in policy, but as well as in, Gabriela was mentioning just in terms of engagement and on campaigns. So very simply, it really just comes down to, are we on the radar, and are our demands and issues being addressed by politicians?
Very true. Very true. Who else wants to add something to that? Jonathan?
Well, I think he really hit it on the nail. He hit it on the nail. I mean, unless we're actually showing out and saying we are here, we're paying attention, we will continue to be disregarded when it comes to the political process. I mean, if we're not saying, because someone said to me that a lot of what happens in politics is all about re-election and going up for a different position, right? So if folks are not seeing the benefit, of course it should be all about helping our community at all, but overall, but it has to turn into how can we get votes for whatever it is that we're trying to do, right? So if we're not going out to vote, and I'm not necessarily saying vote for the Democrats, vote for the president, I'm just saying that this is the way in which that happens. And whatever way we choose to exercise that vote, I think we should definitely make sure to go out and to vote. See, I can't particularly vote because I'm undocumented, so this is especially touchy for me because I see so many folks who have the opportunity to vote but yet don't, and in return I get to see how they're not being heard in the political process. So I think we should all definitely need to make sure that we're going out, we're getting our cousins, our neighbors, our aunties go out to vote, because this is how our communities start to have a real seat at the table.
I'd like to just add real quick, and I don't mean, I also think there's something to be said of that voting just being one part of the actual process. I mean, voting is obviously like one of the most important actions that we can take. It sends a message, but I think the other part of it is just like the follow-up and being involved with organizations like the one that I work for, Texas Organizing Project, but others across the country that engage on issues and are putting pressure and building relationships with elected officials and boards, at the city, state, and federal level. To work on these policies, and I think that's just the continuation of the civic engagement process in terms of continuing to work on issues, because it doesn't stop on election day.
Very true. And Gabby, you want to say something about that?
I'm just going to add briefly, because I think both of them hit it right on the head there. The engagement does have to continue, not only on the part of the parties, but on our side as Latinos, as leaders. We can't stop, and we do have to go local, because at the end of the day, this is all about local. I want to raise the issue of gerrymandering, because it's really hurt our community. It's also hurt the African American community. We keep having whenever we start to create really good coalitions, somehow the census comes out and the electoral process, starts being discussed at the state level, and next thing I know, our communities are being divided into little strips. And so we lose our power as a voting bloc. Just because we're 3% of the vote doesn't mean we can't have an influence. But if they divide that 3% into 3 pieces, now you've diluted it. Yeah. So we have to be engaged at the state and local level. The other thing I want to raise was something, I can't remember who said it, but somebody, it was you, Eliane, you talked about voter ID and the issue related to Texas, for example, where the rules changed. If there's a reason for Latinos to vote, it's the fact that there are some very wealthy people out there spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to suppress our vote. That alone should be like a complete, total drive to make us go out to the polls just to prove them wrong.
That's what I'm saying. I take it as a dare. It's, how can you not do it when you know that they're doing that on purpose? Because they don't want us to. They know the power that we have if we actually get out there and do it. So I'm going. Yes. I'm going to now ask you a question that came from the audience. We have a question here from, and I hope that you can see it on the screen. The question is from Elisa Batista, and her question is, I'm going to skip a little bit from the beginning because she's saying that you are wonderful panelists. So her question is, registering people to vote is one thing, but getting them to show up to the polls on a Tuesday, no less, is another. What do you guys, because you work on the ground, what do you plan to do to get Latinos, especially those who must work, are elderly, or don't have driver's licenses, or have other barriers to vote tomorrow? What are your plans around that to help this kind of people?
Well, luckily here in Maryland, we're lucky to have early voting. So we had, I think about, we had a whole week where folks could vote either on Saturday or Sunday. And we had a lot of opportunities for Latinos and anyone to be able to go out to the polls. But in Maryland, we're doing a lot of driving folks to the polls for those who can't drive. But I mean, I definitely don't think that we're doing enough. But I think that those are ways to be able to deal with some of those issues.
Yeah, and similar, here in Texas, with the electoral program that we're running through Texas Organizing Projects PAC, for us, it's really about removing every obstacle to voting, which is why, during these last 2 weeks of early vote, we ask people if they need a ride to vote, and if they need a ride, we give them that ride. Between the first day of early voting and through the last day of early voting on the 31st, this past Friday, we gave out a little bit more than 500 rides to vote. We have another 500 scheduled, tomorrow for Election Day. So it's all about making voting easy and convenient for them, but then it's also about removing every single excuse that people could possibly, give you. When our canvassers and our organizers go to the doors and they ask the voters, we're visiting them at their door because they're still on the voter list as having not voted, right? Mm-hmm. So, if they say they've already voted, we have to, engage in a little bit of, organizing Jedi mind tricks. It's just like, oh, really? You voted? Where did you go vote? And really making sure it's like, seriously, literally, we could take you to the go vote right now, and really, but it's also like working through problems with regards to the voter ID. In Dallas this past week, we had an elderly gentleman, a U.S. veteran, who's gone blind, who could not find his driver's license.
Oh my gosh.
He has an ID, but he's blind now. He can't see. So one of our organizers helped him find it in his house, and then took him to go vote, right? So, I mean, you have, the issue is kind of, it's multi-layered. You have people who are occasional voters and getting them out to vote, and then you have people who want to vote, but have some sort of obstacle. So it's all about removing that obstacle and making sure that they can do that. And if you want to check it out, you can go to drivefordemocracy.com. It's just an example of one of our organizing efforts that we do to make voting easy and convenient for people.
Beautiful. And Jonathan?
And one last thing that we're also doing in Maryland, I actually am doing this tomorrow at 7 a.m. Our campaign actually has a voter empowerment program. We have a hotline where if anyone approaches to vote and has any issues doing so, they can call in English or in Spanish and sort of report that special incident. So we'll be very closely monitoring the process of voting tomorrow to make sure that there are no hiccups, that folks who come out to vote, that they have the opportunity to do so. And we're doing this in various languages that are spoken in Maryland.
Beautiful. Gabby?
That's exactly what I would do if I had a whole team on the ground. One of getting people to polls is critical. Helping them out, helping them understand where they can get information, who they can call, all of that you do in advance, and you just keep pushing out the information. I also believe, though, in the use of social media increasingly, especially with millennials, and also just with Latinos in general. We're very good about text messaging. I may not be good at Google Hangouts, but our people are.
You are perfect. You are perfect at Google Hangout. So I'm very curious, and I want to ask you this. So what are the races that you'll be watching tomorrow? Because I know everybody's like, ooh, like Colorado, and like, I know I'm excited about many of them, but I want to hear what you guys are excited about. Anyone?
Well, Colorado.
Texas, you're not excited, Texas? You must be excited.
Well, I was actually going to let Gabriela go first, just because I feel like I'm trying to take a step back, and I think that, Gabby, you have a broader view of the country than I do here in Texas. We literally are our own country, but.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I know I'm excited to see, about what happens with Leticia in Texas. I'm excited to see what happens in Nevada with Lucy, in Lucy Flores, and in Colorado with Udall. There's so many races that are exciting. So okay, so let's not get like political here, but so what would be, to let you go, because I know I'm taking a little bit too much of your time now. We're past the deadline. So what is your call to action to the community? What do people need to do tonight to get ready for tomorrow? And where can they find last-minute information to get ready?
So here in Texas, people can go to organizetexas.org /polling to find their polling location. You can also go to drivefordemocracy.com and find out if you're in Houston, Dallas, or San Antonio, how you can volunteer to give rights to the polls, what you need to go vote. For us, it's really about making voting easy and convenient, and scaling up our volunteer capacity so that we can make sure that everybody who needs a right to vote can get that right.
Awesome, awesome. Anyone else, Gabby?
Well, unfortunately, I live in D.C. and we don't really have any rights. But
taxation without representation.
Yes, that's right. Taxation without representation. Although we all love Ellen. And I basically too, I just go online and look at our electoral commission, and it'll give you the addresses. That's if you have access to online. My understanding, though, is that there's so many in the States. There's so many organizations that have done good work. It's really just kind of tapping into your network and just asking the question, and someone will they'll help you find your way. It's pretty much the same in every state, so it's really a question of getting in touch with your electoral commission.
Yeah, very true, very true. And Jonathan, I'll give you the chance to direct people in Maryland.
Absolutely. I really appreciate how we emphasize on sort of the importance of the local elections. And here in Maryland, we have elections not only for governor and attorney general and comptroller, but also for the state legislature and county councils and school boards. So I would encourage folks from Maryland to go to mdelect.net where you can type in your address and it'll tell you all your districts, your county, your state districts, because there's some really important races going on. And while I think that the race for governor is so important and will lead a lot of the conversation about what happens in Maryland and whether we move forward or back, I also think that there's a really strong need for legislators that understand and are on the same page about our issues. So please be educated about what's going on in terms of that. And I think that there's a great Washington Post article on the candidates for Maryland governor. If you just type in where they stand Maryland governor, Washington Post, it comes up and it explains all the different issues. And it's very clear where they stand on like education, when it comes to the achievement gap, college tuition, the economy. I think that will give folks a really good view of where they stand and who the more appropriate candidate for governor is. So those are my two sources.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to give a couple of addresses too. They should be on the screen rotating right now. So a couple of are the League of Women Voters has the vote411.org. Which is a great resource to find out, what the candidates are in your locality, and and where to go to vote and that kind of thing. The Voto Latino has the Power Our Voice campaign, which has been going on for a couple of months now, actually, and I'm part of the campaign, so I'm very happy about it. And the website is latinos2014.com. So there you can have, again, information on candidates, information on polling locations, information on everything that you need to know to get ready for tomorrow. And there's also a couple of phone numbers. So if you have a pen and pencil, I give you 1-866-OUR-VOTE, and in Spanish is 1-888-Ve y Vota. So it's go and vote, ve y vota. And I want to thank you guys for taking the time to be here tonight. It's been an amazing conversation. Of course, I wouldn't have invited anyone because I respect what you do every day so much. And so I appreciate very much you taking the time to be here, explaining the different issues to people and the importance to be there tomorrow. I want to urge everyone to visit the websites for all of these organizations for the Progressive Congress, which is progressivecongress.com. And Gabby, she writes amazing articles that explain so much. I have learned so much with you, Gabby, so thank you for everything that you do. For Joaquín, the organizedtexas.org, which is the website for his organization, and he, there you're gonna find again a lot of community engagement, not just during elections but throughout the year. They do so many things to educate the community and to get people involved in different issues, regardless of whether there's an election or not. Great work. And then Jonathan already shared the websites for Maryland, so thank you so much. I don't know them by heart, but thank you all for you have the floor. You have the floor to say any last words.
Go vote. Ve y vota.
Ve y vota.
Sí, por favor, salgan a votar.
Por favor.
Manténganse envueltos.
And yes, that's the last word. I'm going to leave you with that. Politicians are only going to take us seriously when they see that we turn out and when we show that voting power that we do have already. So go and do it. I want to see you tomorrow at the polls. Tweet your picture with the voting sticker, and I see you next week online. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you, Elian.
Thank you, Elian.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Okay.